Psst, hey, come here. Are you watching Fear City, New York versus the Mafia, which is a new limited documentary series on Netflix? No? Nah, forget about it. This is the story of the New York mob and the feds who try and take them down. The documentary really shows how organized crime was able to take a foothold in New York. I mean, you have political unrest, you have crime on the rise, violence is just breaking out all throughout the city, and the police aren't really able to do anything. And then when they can, I mean, there's just more and more that is inundating the city. And so you have organizations who are now taking advantage of this, not only because they're able to protect those that are in their neighborhoods, but they're looking out for maybe the city as a whole. Well, not necessarily looking out for it. I mean, they're using it to their advantage, and they're working every angle they can to make profit. The amount of money that cycled through the mob that the documentary shows is, I mean, it's just astounding. We get really interesting interviews from mob enforcers, the FBI, and even the prosecutors. So we get a pretty well-rounded image of everything that was going on, how much money was being made, how these organizations were working the system to gain themselves even more money, which then gained them power and influence, which then allowed them to work within the political systems and to really control the city to their benefit. The documentary is not afraid to show us the gritty and the grisly crime scene photos either. They are violent and they're gnarly, but that's exactly what was going on. So for them to kind of blur it out or to not be as shocking as it is, I think would do a disservice or an injustice to the crimes that happened. This limited documentary series is only 3 episodes long, and they do pack a lot in there, but at times I felt that it was a little rushed, that I would have liked maybe some more information put in there to just add us, maybe give us one more episode, just to make it a little bit longer, to really dive in. I mean, I felt satisfied at the end, but I just felt like, you know what, I think maybe we were rushing through some of it just a little bit quickly, because they really do cover a lot of ground. I mean, they cover the 5 organized crime families in New York, and you could have probably gone into a lot more detail, probably more than just 4 episodes. I mean, they probably could have done an episode on each family to really give us a well-rounded picture of each of them, their inner workings, how it all came to be, how people rose to power, and what kind of backstabbing went on throughout there. But as it stands, I mean, it is a decent watch. I love that we also get to hear audio from wiretaps from the feds. That's pretty cool, because what that does is really help to build the picture that they use in court when they take all of these crime bosses and these crime families to court to prosecute them. They're using their own words against them in their own voices. And I love that we get to be able to hear that as well. Some of the scenarios too sounded a little precarious. I mean, you get to hear the feds in these interviews, and they're much older now, obviously, because they were doing these in the 70s and the 80s. And you just get to hear what they went through, the techniques and the tricks that they used to infiltrate the homes, to be able to put wiretaps in, and then what they did, what happens if you get caught, what happens if you need to reinstall them, what happens if something just doesn't go according to plan, how do you recover from that? Like I mentioned, we get a lot of interviews, and it's not just from talking heads. And that's what I really appreciate about this documentary, is that it's not just somebody who doesn't really have any connection to what was happening telling us about it, as narrating it or just kind of trying to inform us, like maybe a historian trying to explain it all to us. No, we have the mob enforcers who were actually doing it. With the interview on camera, because they've either worked out deals or they've served time or whatever it is. Maybe they're still on the run. Who knows? I guess they wouldn't be on the run because we get to see their faces. But I love that we get their perspective. So it's a true, straight from the horse's mouth type of narrative. And the same goes for the cops, for the feds, for the prosecutors. We get to hear what they were thinking, how things went when things didn't go the way they planned, what they did to recover, and just, I love all of their perspective. And then even the speculation or the worry about, we have to have a unanimous jury come back for a conviction. What happens if one of the mob gets to them? What happens if there's doubt in this? What if our evidence isn't strong enough to really convict them? Then they can go free. And you just get to hear all of these perspectives, and it really works to build a very compelling story. I like that I learned a little bit about the mob too. I mean, just their inner workings, how they structured. I mean, you know, you have a boss, an underboss, and then some captains, and then soldiers, and how things move about within there and what their roles are. And I did find that really interesting, especially because I'm not well versed in that at all. I mean, I've seen The Godfather and several mob-themed movies and shows, but it really adds weight to everything by being able to hear from people who are involved in it, or from people who were prosecuting them or actively involved and really close to the family members. And love him or hate him, I didn't realize that Rudy Giuliani was part of the prosecution, the federal prosecution for New York, that went to take down the crime families. I found that really interesting. I loved his perspective and his commentary on some of the family members of each of the crime families, because there's no love lost there, and he didn't pull any punches, and you can tell that he's not just middle of the road in his opinion of some of them, and he voiced that. And so I found it to be engaging and funny in that way. So ultimately, this is a really good watch, even though I would have liked some more detail or some more depth to some of the features. I had fun with it. I was interested, I was engaged, it taught me something, and I think you could get a lot out of it too, especially if you're a fan of true crime. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some graphic, violent images. There are a lot of movies and shows that are about organized crime. Do you have a favorite? I'd love to know what that is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.